She didn't cry when she packed her bags, didn't pause, didn't hesitate, no shaking hands, no second thoughts. She said it was just a job opportunity, said it wasn't about me, said I should understand. I stood in the doorway, silent, watching my wife walk toward a future that didn't include me, convinced she was moving up, convinced I would stay exactly where she left me. She never looked back. Years passed. By the time she finally realized what she'd traded away, the nights were quiet, the success felt empty, and regret had nowhere left to hide. But I wasn't waiting. I wasn't broken. I wasn't the man she left behind anymore. My name is Andrew Miller, and until the day my wife left, I believed loyalty was enough to build a life. We weren't rich. We weren't flashy. But we were stable. Or so I thought. Emily and I met in our mid-20s. Same city, same social circle, same tired optimism about working hard and building something together. She was ambitious in a way that impressed people. I was steady in a way they rarely noticed. When we got married, she told everyone she was marrying potential. At the time, I thought it was a compliment. The first few years were good. Not perfect, but real. Long workdays, shared dinners, quiet weekends where success meant paying the bills on time and saving just enough to feel hopeful. Emily worked in marketing, always chasing the next role, the next title, the next step. I worked in operations, boring by comparison, but dependable. I was the man who made sure things didn't fall apart. And for a while, that was enough. Then the job offer came. It didn't look glamorous at first, but it was in another city, a bigger company, a bigger title, a bigger promise. She brought it up casually, like she'd already made peace with it. "I've been thinking," she said one night over dinner, "this could really change things for me." "For us?" I asked. She hesitated, just long enough for me to notice. "For me," she corrected. "For my career." I nodded, asked questions, did what a supportive husband is supposed to do. What I didn't realize was that the decision had already been made. Over the next few weeks, the house changed. Conversations became transactional. Plans became optional. She talked about her future more than our life. When I asked what this meant for us, she gave rehearsed answers. "We'll figure it out. Plenty of couples make it work. Don't be so dramatic." The night she finally said it, she didn't raise her voice. "I think I need to go," she said quietly. Alone. That word hit harder than anything she could have shouted. I asked if there was someone else. She shook her head. "No, this isn't about another man. It's about growth." I wanted to ask why growth required leaving me behind, but I didn't. She framed it as temporary, as practical, as necessary. I framed it as abandonment, silently. She moved out 2 weeks later, left behind the things she didn't need, took only what fit into the future she imagined. I stayed, same apartment, same job, same routine. The silence she left behind was louder than any argument we'd ever had. And while she chased opportunity, I stayed and learned something far more valuable. What it means to rebuild yourself when the person you trusted most decides you're no longer part of their plan. The apartment felt different after Emily left. Not emptier, just quieter, in a way that made time feel heavier. I kept expecting to hear her keys at the door, her voice from the bathroom, the familiar rhythm of two people moving through the same space without needing to speak. None of it came back. That first week, I stayed busy on purpose. Extra hours at work, late dinners, anything to avoid sitting with the reality that my marriage hadn't ended with a fight, but with a decision I was never invited to make. Emily called occasionally. Short updates, controlled check-ins. The city's exciting. The team's impressive. I'm learning so much. I told her I was glad. And I meant it, at least partly. But every call ended the same way, with a distance that felt permanent, even when she pretended it wasn't. At work, people noticed the change before I talked about it. "You okay?" my manager asked one afternoon. I nodded, just adjusting. He didn't push. He never did. I buried myself in systems, schedules, processes, the parts of my job that rewarded consistency, where improvement came quietly, not with applause. Over time, Emily's updates changed. What started as excitement became pressure. The job was demanding, the expectations relentless. She talked about visibility, politics, proving herself, about how hard it was to stand out in a room full of people just like her. I listened, offered support, stayed neutral. She rarely asked about me. Months passed. Our conversations grew less frequent, then less personal. Eventually, they stopped altogether. The divorce paperwork arrived in a plain envelope. No note, no explanation, just signatures. I signed it, sent it back, without comment. It wasn't dramatic. It was final. That was the moment I understood something important. She didn't leave because she wanted more. She left because she believed I was finished growing, and once that belief takes hold, nothing you say can undo it. So I stopped trying. I started investing differently, not just financially. Personally, certifications, projects others avoided, expertise built where visibility was low, but impact was real. I didn't chase promotions. I became indispensable. Years passed, quietly, and while Emily climbed ladders that required constant proof, I built a foundation that didn't need validation. We didn't speak again until nearly 7 years later. The message came out of nowhere. "Hey, it's Emily." I know this is unexpected. I stared at the screen for a long time before opening it. Life had moved on. So had I. What she didn't know yet was that the man she left behind had changed. Not by chasing opportunity, but by becoming one. Emily's message sat unanswered for 3 days, not because I didn't know what to say, but because I finally understood something important. I didn't owe immediacy to someone who once decided I was optional. When I finally replied, it was brief. "Hope you're well. What's up?" No warmth, no bitterness, just distance. Her response came almost instantly, like she'd been waiting. She asked how I'd been, said she'd thought about reaching out before, but life got complicated. She mentioned the job again. How it had grown. How the pressure never stopped. How success at that level was a moving target. I read between the lines. Emily was tired. The ambition that once carried her forward had turned into a treadmill. Promotions came with new expectations, new politics, new people to impress. Every win was temporary, every mistake permanent. She didn't say she was unhappy, but she didn't say she was fulfilled either. We exchanged a few messages. Careful, surface level. She asked where I was living now. "Same city," I replied. "Different life." She didn't press. Over the next few weeks, she reached out more often. Not desperate, not emotional, just curious. She asked about my work. For the first time in years, I answered honestly. Not with numbers, not with titles, with impact. I told her about the systems I'd built, the teams I'd stabilized, the problems I'd solved quietly while others chased recognition. I didn't brag. I didn't need to. She noticed the difference anyway. One evening, she asked a question that would have mattered years ago. "Do you ever think about what could have been?" I stared at the screen, then typed, "I think about what is." She didn't reply for a long time. When she finally did, her tone had changed. She said the opportunity that once felt like freedom had become a cage, that she was respected but replaceable, or that she'd sacrificed more than she planned, and not all of it had been worth it. I listened, because listening has always been my strength. What I didn't do was reassure her. I didn't say I understood why she left. I didn't say I would have done the same. I let her sit with the reality she'd chosen. A month later, she was back in town. Conference. She asked if I wanted to meet for coffee. I said yes, not out of nostalgia, out of closure. When she walked in, I barely recognized her. The confidence was still there, but sharper now, more defensive, like armor worn too long. We sat, talked about neutral things. Then she studied me. You seem different. I am. In a good way. She added quickly. I nodded. So are you. She laughed, but it didn't reach her eyes. She talked about late nights, weekends sacrificed, relationships that never had room to exist. I thought I was choosing growth, she said quietly, but I think I was just running. I didn't correct her. She asked if I was seeing anyone. No, I said. Not because I was waiting, because I was content. That surprised her. What about you? I asked. She hesitated. It's complicated. Of course it was. As we stood to leave, she looked at me differently. Not with confidence. With regret. I didn't think you'd surpass me. I met her eyes. I didn't try to. That was the truth. I didn't need to win. I just needed to grow. And while she chased opportunity, I built something sustainable, something that didn't disappear the moment I stopped proving myself. She thanked me for meeting her. I wished her well, and for the first time, I meant it, because the life she chose taught her a lesson mine never needed to. That ambition without balance always demands payment, and the bill is usually paid in years you can't get back. After we met for coffee, Emily didn't disappear again, but she didn't rush either. Our conversation settled into something cautious, measured, two people orbiting a shared past without stepping back into it. She reached out every few weeks, almost always late at night, almost always after something in her world collapsed. A project that didn't land, a promotion that came with strings attached, a reshuffle that left her exposed. She never said she regretted leaving me. Not once. But she talked more and more about exhaustion, about how the job that once represented freedom now dictated everything. Where she lived, how she spent her time, even who she was allowed to disappoint. I listened, not as her husband, not even as her ex, as someone who understood the cost of building your life around approval. Meanwhile, my life moved quietly forward. The company I worked for went through a restructuring. No headlines, no announcements. But when leadership looked at what actually held the operation together, my name kept appearing in rooms I'd never been invited into before. Not because I asked, because results speak when egos finally get tired. I was offered a role I never applied for, more responsibility, more autonomy, a seat at a table I didn't know existed. I accepted immediately, not because of the title, because of the trust. Emily found out through someone else. She texted me late that night. I heard about your promotion. Congratulations. I replied with one word. Thank you. A pause. Then, you always said consistency mattered more than visibility. I smiled. I learned it the hard way. A few months later, she was back in the city. Not for a conference, for interviews. At first, she spoke around it, exploring options, realigning priorities. Eventually, she said it. I'm thinking of coming back. To the city? I asked. To this version of life, she said carefully. I let the silence do the work. I don't want to be on a treadmill forever. That makes sense, I said. Then she added quietly, I've been thinking about us. There it was. Not a plea, not an apology, a test. Years ago, I would have filled that silence, reassured her, closed the gap. Now, I didn't. I've thought about us too, I said, just not in the same way. She went quiet. I thought, maybe you'd still be waiting. I leaned back. I wasn't waiting, I said calmly. I was building. She exhaled. I see that now. She asked if we could meet again. I agreed. When we did, the balance had completely shifted. She watched me closely, noticing the calm, the absence of urgency. "You're comfortable," she said. "Yes." "With yourself?" "Yes." She looked down. I thought success would feel like this. "What does it feel like now?" I asked. "Fragile." We walked for a while, then she stopped. "Do you think we could have grown together?" I answered carefully. "Only if we were both willing to slow down," I said. "And you weren't." Tears welled, but didn't fall. I thought choosing myself meant leaving, and I thought supporting you meant staying. I replied, "We were both wrong." She looked at me. "You're not angry." "No," I said, "I'm just finished." That hit harder than anger ever could, because regret isn't loud. It doesn't shout. It stays. Quiet, persistent, unavoidable. And in that moment, she finally understood what she'd lost. Not a man who failed to keep up, but one who outgrew the race entirely. Emily didn't ask to get back together right away. That would have been too obvious, too desperate. Instead, she tried something subtler. She started asking about the details of my life, not updates, routines, how I structured my days, how I chose what work to take, how I decided when to say no. It wasn't curiosity, it was comparison, because for the first time since I'd known her, she was measuring herself against something she couldn't outrun. "I don't think I ever learned how to stop," she said one evening. "I just kept pushing because that's what ambitious people do." I thought about that. "Ambition isn't the problem," I said. "Direction is." She went quiet. A week later, she told me she'd turned down a role she would have chased without hesitation years ago. Same title, more money, less control. I didn't want to feel trapped again. "That's progress," I said. She smiled faintly. "You don't sound surprised." "I'm not," I replied. "You're smart. You just mistook momentum for meaning." That one landed. Over time, her messages changed. Less about work, more about reflection, about what she'd traded to stay competitive. Friendships, stability, patience. About me. She admitted she'd assumed I'd always be there, that my steadiness would wait for her ambition to finish running. "I didn't think you'd move on so completely." "I didn't move on," I said. "I moved forward." She asked if I was happy. Yes. No pause, no hesitation. That unsettled her more than anything else, because happiness, when it's real, doesn't ask permission. The turning point came quietly. She told me she'd been offered a chance to return to the city. Lower profile, more balance. "I'm thinking about taking it," she said. "Starting over." "With what?" I asked. She hesitated. "With roots." She wasn't talking about a job. She was talking about me. "I'm glad you're finding clarity," I said. "But you should do it for yourself." She swallowed. "What if I want to do it with you?" There it was. Not a request. A hope. I took a breath. "I can't be the place you return to once the race gets exhausting," I said calmly. "I was never a checkpoint." Her eyes filled. "I know I hurt you." "Yes," I said, "but that's not why this won't work." She looked confused. "It won't work," I continued, "because the version of me you're reaching for doesn't exist anymore." She shook her head. "People don't change that much." I smiled. Sad, but certain. "They do," I said, "when they're forced to build themselves from the ground up." We sat in silence. "So this is it?" she asked. "This is honesty." She nodded slowly. "I thought regret would fix things." "Regret explains," I said. "It doesn't repair." She left shortly after. No argument, no drama. Just acceptance settling in, heavy and unavoidable. We didn't stop talking immediately, but the messages thinned, lost their urgency. She took the job, built a quieter life. I wished her well, and meant it, because regret doesn't always end in reunion. Sometimes it ends in growth, separate, unequal, real, and for the first time, that was enough. The last time Emily and I spoke, it wasn't planned. No late-night message, no carefully worded check-in. She called on a quiet Sunday afternoon, months after she'd moved back. "I just wanted to tell you," she said. "I finally understand." I didn't rush her. "I thought success meant momentum," she continued. "Forward motion, constant improvement. But I never stopped to ask what I was improving toward." I listened. "I left because I was afraid of standing still," she said. "But I didn't realize standing still with the right person is different from being stuck." I closed my eyes. "That's a hard lesson," I said. "Yes," she replied. And I learned it too late. There was no bitterness in her voice, no desperation, just acceptance. "I'm happy you're doing well," she added. "Truly." "Thank you," I said. "I hope you are too." We said goodbye. No promises, no loose ends, no unfinished sentences. And that mattered. Life moved on the way it always does, quietly, persistently, without checking whether you're ready. My career settled into something solid, sustainable. I mentored people the way I once wished someone had mentored me, not by pushing them faster, but by helping them last longer. I built routines that protected my time, friendships that didn't compete with my work, a life that didn't need to explain itself. I dated again, not out of loneliness, but clarity, with stronger boundaries, with a better understanding of what partnership actually requires. I never spoke badly of Emily, not because she didn't hurt me, but because holding on to anger would have meant she still had influence. Years later, I ran into her at a bookstore. Different aisles, different energy. She looked calmer, less armored. We smiled, exchanged pleasantries. Nothing more. As we parted, she said something I hadn't expected. "You didn't fail me," she said quietly. "I failed to see you." I nodded. We both ended up where we needed to be. And that was true. She left for a job opportunity believing she was choosing growth. What she didn't realize was that growth without alignment leads you away from the people who help you become whole. By the time she regretted it, I wasn't waiting, not because I'd moved on from her, but because I'd finally moved toward myself. Sometimes people don't leave because you're not enough. They leave because they don't yet know what enough feels like. And sometimes the greatest proof of growth isn't success. It's knowing when not to go back.